This is Jodie.
Put 140 in, it was just like that never happened.
Pick up Surfer or Surfing or Tracks, any of those magazines. You'd be lucky most months if you could find a whichever woman.
I think they just need to look like women, look feminine, look attractive, dress well.
You do sometimes coming up against some really ignorant characters that generally are worse surfers than you are.
I think because the male surfers can see that they're so much better and they don't think that the girls are good enough.
I think it's pretty nasty. I've had a few guys wanting to hit me and try and push me off the board.
A lot of people who are behind surfing are males who are very interested in male surfing, and that's it.
I think some women do good in sports, and I think there's too much of a competitive battle when you always have a woman, trying to outdo a man.
I don't think they'll ever be as good as the men, and that's the same in any sport.
I remember our grandfather asking us in high school, are you taking shorthand classes and typing? And I remember looking at him like, are you kidding? I'm going to be a pro surfer.
Well, I grew up right on the tip of Western Australia. I'd never seen another girl surfer in the flesh. A lot of the girlfriends of the guys that used to go surfing with used to just sit in the car while the boys went surfing and read Mills and Boone's book. And then the boyfriend would come back and get in the car and she'd hand him the towel. And I just couldn't understand that. Even then, I wanted to rebel against about being called, you're really good for a girl. I hated that sentence. I wanted to be renowned for being one of the best surfers in the world, not best female surfer.
I was a full tomboy and loved being athletic and hanging with the boys. They were kind of like my big brother, and they took me under their wing and let me hang out with them and stuff, which was probably kind of odd if you were from the outside looking in, because here you got this, 12, 13-year-old girl hanging out with, 19, 20-year-old construction worker guys. At the time I had been working at this Italian restaurant, and I remember asking the boss, do you think I can take a month off and go to California? Because I need to surf this contest. And he's like, you're going to be a pro surfer? And I said, I think so, but I'm not sure. I'll let you know, but can I keep my job, I wanted to win the contest. That's all that mattered to me. Literally half a dozen girls surfing the whole northern beaches. To tell you how much I look like a boy, I had some of the local grommets going, oh, get a haircut, mate. So, because I was trying to fly under the radar. I didn't speak, I didn't look at anyone, I just went out there and caught my waves. I remember saying to my mum about Margot Over, who was world champion in 78. Do you reckon I'll ever surf against her one day? And I remember that being a massive thing to actually verbalise that. I think that was like this burning desire that I want to be the best in the world, but I didn't really want anyone to know that I wanted that. I was just a horrible kid. Like, I was cute, but I was the kid that if I was losing it, monopoly, I'd just like chuck the board and leave. If I wasn't playing, nobody was playing, because it's just the way I rolled. My very first sort of jumped up to my feet, and I remember going all the way to the sand until the fin hooked and jumped off and just went, this is it. Like, that's all I wanted to do, is catch waves. As soon as I made that decision to leave school and come to Australia, I was thinking about being the best and winning a world title.
I'll never forget the first contest that came to Bondi, and I couldn't believe that I wasn't allowed to go in it because it was a professional event. And I remember them saying on their microphone, well, that little boy, get out of the contest area. And they said it 3 or 4 times, and, you know, I figured it's not me because they took saying for a boy to get out of the way. You just see that shock and like that's actually a girl surfing. That's all I live for. And at the same time, I started getting really sore and I thought it was from surfing. Then I'd wake up in the morning and have just like really swollen knees and I couldn't straighten my arms. It ended up being that they said that I had junior rheumatoid arthritis. So almost every week I had to go to hospital, and then they used to make me sleep in these nets like that all the time. Yeah, the only way you get better is from movement. I found that surfing made me feel better. From a young age, I think 13, I started to hang at Bondi Beach on my own. This was kind of almost like going into a men's club. They let you know it, especially at Bondi. One guy in particular, I caught a whole lot of waves, and the guys really hated it if I got a lot of waves. And so he dropped in on me. I'm like, hey, don't drop in on me. And he just kicked me and said, you know, get off my back, it's my wave. You were the one who dropped in on me, and he just told me to go in. So that kind of stuff happened a lot. But then there'd be 4 or 5 guys that were always really beautiful and always sort of looked after me. So they kept me going because there was a lot of reasons why I should have stopped.
The promise of surfing was born right when I'm just starting to compete. There was this lifestyle looming and like it was going to be massive. The tour went for 8 or 9 events. We started in Australia, I think, went to California, Japan, Hawaii, and France. Somehow I convinced the parents that I'd have plenty of people's places to stay and I'll just catch a flight to California and I'll come back in about 2.5 months.
It was like $8,000 or $10,000 around the world ticket then. We would go at the height of the season everywhere around the world.
Gee, this is a lovely, lovely room, isn't it? God, what is this, Plaza Hotel?
There's no hot running water. There's no furniture, but you have a toilet. There's a toilet that works.
Really hungry, I wonder if I'm finding bread somewhere.
A lot of us realised that the contest areas weren't too bad. They had big tents. Just take all your boards out of your board bag and zip yourself in your board bag and sleep there.
Near Melbourne, we rented our company was Rent-A-Ball. You ever heard of it?
And there were a few rental cars that were so badly trashed, they were reported stolen and pushed off cliffs. But I have to say, none of them were mine.
The very first contest we surfed in Hawaii, we had these one-piece bathing suits. That was our contest jersey.
There was cut so high. I don't even know if I should say this story. That well, another girl was going, does anyone need a razor? Anyone?
Anyway, there's footage of Jody.
She pulls off this big turn, and at the same time she's pulling her strap up so her boob doesn't fall out.
It's not practical for a good reason. Why don't boys surf in sluggos? I remember one time I got pitched and I ended up getting an enema so bad I thought I was going to die. It was like someone had put a bayonet up my bum. From that day on, I used to wear a pair of rolled up boys board shorts. I said to myself, I'm never wearing a bikini in the surf ever again. Female sport is only just starting to open up. So it's kind of ridiculous that everyone was swept up in that thing of how awesome is this going to be?
It's
living in California, and I started the OP Pro. We thought it was going to be a surf contest at Huntington Beach, and it turned out to be like a mega event where hundreds of thousands of people showed up. It was like mind-boggling.
What's the OP Pro mean to you girls?
That's a guy.
Okay, guys, what brings you to the OP?
In the 1980s, the money that was beginning to flood into the sport drew all kinds of people who wanted just to find some way to hang around with these flashy young demigods with their neon surfboards and their highlight hair and their impossible sense of their own magnificence. Along came a heap of sponsors. A new organisation, the Association of Surfing Professionals, decided that it was going to instill order into a formerly chaotic sport.
I think the ASP, from what I gather, just became more professionalized. It sort of had its sights on trying to be a golfer, a sport that would have a bigger audience.
The OP Pro was like the Wimbledon of surfing. You got 110,000 people to the beach. It's huge.
They would have the bikini contest going on, the women would be out surfing. It was like all the attention was on the beach, and then it was like, boom! You saw the back of everybody's head. When you heard about professional surfing contests, it was always the men that everybody talked about, and so, you were kind of always taking a back seat to that.
There were plenty of men who at the time would say that the girl pro surfers weren't that good.
There was no buzz around the women's side of it. I mean, I remember hearing people refer to the women's heats as like it's the lunch break. The women get sent out when the waves aren't good, and that's when everyone runs up to get their food from the restaurants nearby, and then they come back for the men's heats later on.
During any given day, there's usually only about 2 to 6 hours of relatively good surf, and the rest of the day is pretty much shit. Because you get low tide, you get onshore, you get conditions that aren't conducive to riding the waves.
Bow repairs for tire and Cronulla. I think those were some of the worst waves I surfed. They were supposed to start with the men this day, and it was so bad that at the last minute they put us out.
I think the reason we want to give the men the best conditions because they can do it the best justice, and there's more on the line then,
Conditions were fantastic. We could really take our surfing to its limits, We had a really good fun surf out there.
And then had people saying, oh, the women are just not that good and not very exciting to watch, Oh, you want to miss the beach when the girls are. Fuck, I'd leave the beach too if I had watched the girls surfing 1 foot onshore, complete rubbish. You couldn't even do a turn, and they expected us to go out there and perform.
We didn't surf as good as the men, and we weren't drawing the crowds. It's not that strong a tour for the girls, so we were trying to build the event.
Over the past few years, we've had to be kind of like the sideshow to the men's events, and the men have always welcomed us, to their events. They've kind of had the limelight.
The guys were celebrities. They've made it. So that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to become that. And I suppose you just wanted to become the best at what you did.
The girls that got into pro surfing in the early 1980s were pretty much exactly the same as the boys. They had the same dreams, they had the same visions, but they didn't have the permission of the surf culture.
Rita Zerba there, Florida, USA, came onto the scene in 1982, we're told, and really zapped her when she hit the beach. Unbelievable.
I think she did make it through a few rounds in the men's division. She's a very aggressive surfer for a girl.
Oh, this girl came from Florida, like out of nowhere, Rita Zamba, and just blew everybody away. She was developed from science, and they made the perfect surfer girl.
Soft-spoken Southern girl with just the heart of a killer.
She was so muscly, we nicknamed her Robotron Frida.
Like she was from a Eastern Bloc country, that nature of like, I will not talk to you, you know, like, and just like, I am a competitor. Frida always had Flea, which was a partner at the time. Good looking, blonde, stocky, wide shouldered, hair dried hair, perfect, the full perfect nose, just a tiny little tuft of hair out this shirt. He would be on the beach with his ping pong bats going this way, and they did hand signals, and
they'd be watching me and see me move around, they were just going, whoa, what is she doing now, you know, so they
They're
tend
also
to.
waiting and trying to watch me too to see what I'm doing, which is taking their mind off what they're doing.
you just saw it out at night, or she just appeared with Flea at the dinner, and you go, oh, there goes Frida. And they'd be like ninjas, just like turn up and then disappear.
You know, I heard they said that they thought I was, you know, kind of stuck up, and I didn't hang out with the girls that much. You can't let your guard down, you know, they're gonna find out your weaknesses and, you know, crush you. After I finished second in '83, I realized how bad I wanted it. I didn't have the sponsorships that I needed to get around. I had to go back and work in between to get the money. And I just remember thinking, I can't let Kim win again, you know.
Age 20, Frida happens to be the youngest and only surfer from the East Coast to win the World Women's Surfing Championship.
Set 3 goals in my life, and 1 was being a professional surfer, 2 was to win the world champion, and 3 was to win a Davis Magnum, but I don't think that's good enough.
That's where you get all the attention, that's where you're gonna get the sponsors. You'd end up at the press conference, you get to talk a little, get a picture maybe with the men's winner standing next to them, you know.
Australia's chances of winning its first women's world surfing title were kept alive today when West Australia's Jodie Cooper advanced Sunday's final at the Bow Repairs Open.
How do you go about beating Frida?
The big lump of wood. No, I want to get
85 came down to Bells Beach with Frida's Amber, and the winner of that event was going to win the world title. Trapped in an article, they went to Clairvoyant and they said, who do you think is going to win a world title? And the Clairvoyant said, I won the world title. So you try not to think of that. You know, kind of go, oh, the Clairvoyant said I won it. All the commentators said, oh, we've got our first Australian world champion and we're just waiting for the results. And I lost by 0.2 of a point. The head judge came up to me and basically apologised, said that I had made a mistake and that I'll be okay because I was young and I would probably win another world title. Well, I just thought I was going to make so much money that I'm going to be rich and famous and go home and buy my mum a Mercedes-Benz and she can retire and buy fluffy slippers and live happily ever after. You know, I honestly believe that.
Being young and looking up to all the surfers, I didn't realise that the women got such a small check compared to the men.
The Stevies Pro rates is one of the major surfing events in the world. There's a total of $35,000 purse for the men's event and an additional $10,000 purse for the women's event.
You know, that does make us feel bad because we'd like to be treated as equal as them. I mean, I'm not out to be some, you know, real feminine liberalist or anything. You know, I'm just speaking my own opinion.
They always had an answer for everything. One was, oh, well, there's only like 24 of you at an event, and there's up to 100 guys if they have the trials. I'm pretty sure they tried that one out. Which we went, oh, fair enough.
We are different, but we all spend the same amount of energy, training, efforts, and combination to get to that point. we don't get a discount rate for being not as strong. By then, we'd started to think a little more politically and have to be more united, like trying to be represented and have a voice.
When I started the ASP, the structure of the board was an equal number of event members and an equal number of surf members. And in that room, there was always 2 representatives of women surfing.
It was hard being like the women's rep. You were just in a group with the sponsors of the events and then the guys, representatives, and everybody's just trying to get obviously whatever's best for them.
The male surfers always hated having the women there because they thought that if you're putting the money in the women, that's money that could have gone into the men. And they don't surf as good as us.
No, I don't want to go in and say something that will push it on. I think there's some really good women surfers, but they'll never get close to the men.
The top surfer from any beach could defeat any women that I've ever seen, and that goes for Frida or Jodie or any of them. I think that they have that slightly out of perspective.
It was just an unstable time, and if we're rocking it too much, they're gonna be like, oh, that girl just whinges too much. Like, you know, you're just gonna get a reputation.
And we all felt helpless, like everyone kind of felt the same way, but because we're also competitors, it was really hard to know what to do or how to fix it.
You know, in hindsight, it's a really selfish sport. You just take what you can get and move on.
When I think of Wendy, I think about like a bull, like, you know, here comes Wendy. She'd always tick people off, and
I don't know, Wendy was her own favourite fan. You know, Wendy had this kind of way about her that you just kind of was like, you know, she would go down the heats and she'd have her trainer there and he would be like taking her leg and moving it this way, moving it that way, and the photographers would be going crazy.
Everyone wanted Winnie to win. If a heat was tight heat, we'd all on the beach go, yes, she got done. The score would be read out and they'd be like, Wendy broke the wins, and you'd be there going, oh, bullshit.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. So I remember, you know, going to the pubs on the Northern Beach, and then you could feel people going, oh shit, there's one guy there. So yeah, I got a kick out of that. I can't say no. But that wasn't why I wanted to win world titles. I just wanted to win them because I wanted to be number one. In '87, I was at Manly at the final event, and I needed to make the semis, just outright win the world title, and I got knocked out in the quarters. So I did a dummy split and went home, put some footy. I think I was so blindly angry and just had to get through the people so I could go home and cry. Like, sincerely, I used to be that bummed with coming second. I would rather just accepted a big pile of poop. I was sitting watching the football and I got a phone call from Mark Warren going, where are you? And I thought, I'm watching the football. Like, how annoying can you be? And he goes, you've just won the world title. Get your ass back to the beach. So it was very surreal. Kind of a weird way to win. You've got the points, but it just doesn't feel as good as just kicking everyone's ass on the way. After I won my first world title, I had good money, cars. Like, I was living the dream. But some of the girls didn't even have enough sponsorship money to get from one event to the next.
For the past 4 or 5 years, the top male professional surfers in the world have attracted some pretty lucrative sponsorship deals. Well, the girls have found it a bit tougher to find that sort of money, but 2 years ago, Pam Burridge came across a sponsor that's probably about as far removed from the world of surf as you could possibly find. In fact, you could say that the Asian Wrecking Company of Brookvale in Sydney opened the door on Pam's new surfing career.
Asian Records. That was a scrapyard in Brookvale, so very local sponsor. I had Sunbeam, I had a Kubra hats, which was a good one, and Cadbury Schweppes.
Smiles there, that's the guy.
Some women of surfing fraternity may not see the value in their female counterparts. The corporate sector are starting to.
Can you tell us where the waves are?
Julie Cooper's part in a Coke ad was a breakthrough.
Hey, 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 can't beat the feeling. Can't beat the feeling.
As a man, could get a sponsorship just by winning a few of these, really, you know? But for a woman to get a good sponsorship, you have to be good looking in a conventional sense. You have to smile at the camera. And on top of that, you have to win more than just a few of these, like maybe world champ or close it.
You had to put yourself out there, because otherwise, who's going to want to sponsor someone who doesn't get in the newspapers and get in magazines? Well, a surfing magazine, that was just sheer luck if people got in one of them.
I started working for the magazines, and so I kind of got to like peer behind the curtain. The magazines were effectively sort of run by the advertisers, and the advertisers were surf brands that didn't necessarily sponsor the girls, and so the structure was not there to create an opportunity.
We were saying to surfing and the people who ran it and the companies, promote us. We will get you people into the sport. But they didn't believe in it. The only way you get an article was once every 2 years, a magazine would go, about time we dust off the old girl story and do a story about the whole group. What's it like to be a girl surfer? Oh, yeah, we always joke that the only way we're going to get a cover shot is we go nude. Let's get the best looking one out of a bunch and shove her out. Yeah, let's just get a group of them. We just joke about things like that.
Of course, all the guys were excited about it. They were like, oh, like, check her out. Like, this is what she really looks like and everything. And all the girls were like going, why did she do that? Did she have to do that?
I don't think anyone said boo to Wendy about it. You know, a lot of the boys were like kind of approving of it, rather than seeing Wendy being this fearsome competitor. That made them feel a bit comfortable again that this was a woman's place actually to stood posing the nude for men.
The photo shoot was super easy. I loved the way I looked. Then there was the money side of it, and I was like, okay, like thinking mortgage. You know, I did it just to stick it up the man, because they treated us like blokes. I don't know, and I'm a really terrible tomboy, still am. But I also feel feminine, and I'm proud that I'm a woman. And it ended up being the fastest selling clothing magazine ever. Professional surfer, world champion. That kind of publicity either way could do nothing but good for women surfing.
For the past week, Australia's newest sporting champion has been living in the back of a van. The reason is quite simple. 20-year-old Pauline Menzer doesn't have any sponsors.
Had a few troubles too, like my spare tire fell off and our fridge stopped working.
The problem is sponsorship, or the lack of it.
Unfortunately, I've been unlucky. 1 or 2 sponsors came up and then they backed out at the last minute. So I'm just hoping something will come up this time.
I just thought, buggy you all, we'll do it on my own. Growing up, our family was very poor. When me and my twin brother were 5 and my older brothers were 8, my father was murdered they found him with a hit on the head and killed while he was doing his taxi driving. So my mum was left with 2 5-year-olds and 2 8-year-olds to bring up on her own. There was lots of ways where my mum made us earn what we got. She would take us to Bondi at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon after it's been a really busy day on the beach, and we'd just scout the beach for all the cans and towels and clothes that got left behind, and we'd fill up her car and come back and have garage sales. Then when I was on tour, I'd buy 25 pairs of Levi jeans. You'd pay $20 for them in America and could sell them for $150 in France. And then I started becoming quite known in contest areas for walking out with cases of drinks. And so that's how I ended up surviving, was thanks to like lovely families that I met along the way. They'd be happy to see me, but they're like, what are you selling this time? Yeah, it's kind of a game of survival, I suppose.
They wanted a woman to surf like a man, to look like a woman. There was all these things that you had to be accepted. I got the cover of Tracks twice, which was kind of rare. Pretty much all the photos you'll ever see of me of when I'm wearing a one piece, hello. That's when the photographers took photos of you. We knew we had to promote ourselves, but you're trying to fight for your own inner integrity. We're worthy, we surf good, and try not to buy into it too much, because as soon as you start the argument, you'll be like, oh, but are we really? Are people going to come and watch? Is it worthy?
Pam was a total prodigy from the time she was very young. There'd never been an Australian women's pro champ. Pam was the first one to step out on that stage and say, here I am. And yet I'm sort of not, but I am, but I'm not.
So I feel comfortable with the world title sort of crown and that position being mine. I think that'd be good. I know we're there to win it.
I needed to get through that first round to have a chance to win the world title that year. And it's your home beach, all the focus is in on you. And I didn't evaluate the conditions very well. I just made a bunch of mistakes. So that one was just kind of excruciating. You look like the strong silent type. There is an arrogance there and an ego and a drive. But inside I'm just a bag of worms, you know, it's all front. So I was probably way too young. I probably could have done with a few more years in the amateurs. Having a camera in your face and promoting the sport of surfing and bikinis and swimmers, and got some flack that, oh, you girls need to lose however much weight, then we could promote this sport. Is it a coincidence 2 years later I was anorexic and on the verge of death? I think not, you know. I didn't know I was sick. I just knew that I had to bloody lose some weight because they told me to, or else the whole sport would fail. You know what I mean, sort of. It's just the strangest thing how it can just turn on. It was on a bus trip going to Queensland to one of those events. I was riding the bus in the middle of the night thinking how hungry I was. Because I was hungry, everyone was hungry, we were going to stop and eat. And we stopped to eat and I went, I'm not going to eat. And I didn't eat for a long time after that. No. The only reason I didn't die is because I started to drink again. And it took the edge off. Denial full on with that disease, and there's no way I was going to get help until I was ready, till I assimilated it through. Then I didn't go to a few events that year because I was like, what's the point?
and eventually started to be with people. And then that sort of just let the defences down a bit because, you know, it's such a total staunch existence trying to limit your intake. It's that bad to be that sick. It takes a lot of energy. Gradually kind of normalised to just straight out partying.
She acted out quite a bit. She became quite a concern, I think, for a lot of people in that pro surfing community. That she was just veering off course. How that would work out, no one could tell.
That just got a bit messy, and then I realised that I can't live like this. Other people might be able to do this, but I can't do this. So I had to find a way to recover by being abstinent and looking at life differently.
Everyone loved Pam, you know. Everyone in pro surfing loved Pam. You know, you could feel that she wore her heart on her sleeve in so many ways. Even when she was struggling with all that shit. It was just so human.
We all thought we were really growing up, but we weren't. And you go through so much change in those stages of life. You're developing who you are, what you are, and you're learning to deal with it. The 80s were really hard. If you're gay, there was something wrong with you, you're a disease. But if you're a surfer, female surfer, then it was pretty bad. How people found out about me was I left my diary once in a group of girls' room. 2 hours later, I went, oh, fuck, I left my diary. So I ran back to get my diary, and all of a sudden everyone was all weird. Everyone just went, oh, there's your book, and was like that. And I was like, oh, did they read it? Didn't they read it? Did they read it? No, they didn't read it. So I went on thinking, no, they didn't read it. It's okay, you'll be all right. But then all of a sudden, all this weird stuff started happening. People were treating me different. Some of them didn't want to talk to me. That's how it came out. It was just devastating, just being tarred with a brush, like this big brush like that, you're gay. The sponsor that I had at the time, but someone that I was close to that was within the company said to me, Jade, you might want to think about finding some different sponsorship because they're going to drop you. And one of the words were like, oh, she's just a fucking lesbian anyway. And then I jumped ship to another company because I got rid of it. It's hard to describe, you just knew that things changed. Everything from the male surfers on tour to contest directors to judges. And that's what you often wonder. I'm in a heap with Wendy Boker. God, she looks hot, but I'm this guy. Another thing I was tarnished with was I was a man hater. My heroes were my two brothers and my father. I died for them. You know, like, men in my life were like, I love men.
It's an affront to the idea of the male pro surfer as the male godhead of the whole freaking thing, and all the women around who are supposed to just completely worship him. You know, here are these women who are surfing, and they're dykes. That was usually the word, you know.
I hid it my whole career. As soon as people knew that you're gay, there's no way you get sponsors. My partner traveling with me was my coach. But the weird thing is I got so used to hiding it for so long that now I have trouble just to outright say it.
Yeah, it was really hostile, and you felt like it was an us and them as far as you had to try and prove you weren't gay or something. like they had to be overtly the other way, which might mean that if there was sexual advances from someone in a reasonably powerful position, you might have to pretend like they were welcome or, you know, or so to prove you weren't gay in that climate.
It's weird in surfing because the drug addict, sad story, hot pro surfer, the media portrays them like they're still really popular.
The one thing that I really want to do is project a good image for the sport.
Are you disillusioned, apathetic, and burned out from it all? All of those, and a few more thrown in, but think a few more. Not a few more, actually. Oh, we haven't got that much more. We've got that much time.
I was proud of Jodie when she finally was more open about it, and it kind of made me feel like it was me a little bit.
I'd even go, I'm holding a press conference, gather around and I've bought some freaking nuts and some beer and let's, you know, ready microphone. I did it in a manner like a news reporter would ask me, so, you know, do you have a partner? And I just went, yeah, I do actually, and she lives with me. That way I had nothing to hide, you know, I could just be free of everything. If someone saw me hold my hand or they could use no ammunition to get me.
Most people are cowardly about their own bigotry. They don't try to correct it, but they can be corrected by people who are confident within themselves and say, well, this is who I am. You know, who are you?
There's anger, there is pain, there's embarrassment, there's a lot of self-worth issues. You micromanaging all those things to still become the best person that you kind of can and ride all this out and also do what you want to do, which is make a living out of pro surfing.
News just in, the OP Pro Surfing Championship in Huntington Beach will this year be dropping the women's side event, so more prize money can be devoted to the top 30 male surfers.
We got a letter from OP saying, due to our budget and all these other factors, we're going to eliminate the women's event this year. But we might add bodyboarding and the bikini contest is staying. Yeah.
She's one of the most important people in the OP organisation and the OP Pro. Bonnie, what's the OP Pro mean to you?
Just like asking me what is life. Gives us a chance to do something with surfing and give something to it, and it's our highlight of our year.
No, at that point, we were just really angry.
Yeah, we were just angry. You know, we put up with a lot of stuff, but when OP decided to cancel our division, that's where we had to take a stand.
If the OP Pro does not have women, that's a justification because it's the biggest and most powerful event in the world. No one else should be bothered.
We wrote letters to OP, we wrote letters to the city of Huntington Beach. I remember Alyssa Schwartzstein writing letters. The editor of Surfing Magazine wrote letters, and it's started spreading like wildfire, that people were starting to talk about it.
San Clemente professional surfer Georgia Smith was stunned by the
The Smith twins hope to get up a letter writing campaign to try to sway corporate minds to change.
We were starting to generate enough negative press against OP that they changed their mind and put it back on. Felt so great that we actually stood up for ourselves, not just for us, but for any other women surfer that came along after us.
Women's surfing never seems to get the glory that the men do, although up until recently you had a tremendous article in the Los Angeles Times, which I think was one of the best articles that's ever been seen on either men's or women's surfing. Do you think that will help motivate some more women's events?
Oh, definitely. I'm sure a lot of people saw that and recognized the potential of surfing women, you know.
They're a force of nature. Without their participation, fighting those fights, there may not be a women's tour.
Sunset is deep water, big swells moving.
It's somewhere like Pipeline, it's like jumping off a mountain. Sunset is like wandering into a really dangerous forest full of wild animals. And you just like, either you're hunting it or you're being hunted by it. That was another little mark in the sand for the women. They went there anyway, to Hawaii, in the winter time, where all the men were, all the testosterone was, and they just wanted to surf.
It's going to sound really arrogant, but my surfing in Hawaii is flawless. I knew it was.
That's why Jodie's such a hero to that whole generation, I reckon. It's because although she never won a world title, she was world champ at Sunset Beach.
I got really good results there. I also got a lot of acceptance. All the men are the men. They respected the commitment. I remember one day, Alan Sala, he was a really well-respected Californian dude. He was on my inside and we were both cutting up this huge wave. And we got to the top and I looked at him and he wasn't going and I flipped around and pinged myself and took off. I paddled back out and he was like, oh my God, I cannot believe he took that wave. He goes, I wasn't even going to take that wave. And that day was such a, when you talk about moments, that was a great moment because I knew that, I don't know, I had made it. I had become a good surfer, not just a good girl surfer.
Joe's super strength was in bigger waves. That probably put a bomb under me to try and keep pushing myself. Those little rivalries were good for both of us, really, because we had to keep up with those other girls, you know, who were actually winning the world titles.
The world title had once again escaped Pam Burridge, even before she paddled out for the final at Sunset. Fellow Sydney surfer Wendy Botha had the title in her keeping, and for the 5th time, Pam had to be content with second.
1989, I had a good finish to the year. I won the contest at Sunset Beach, but finished second in the world to Wendy.
I ended up in second place, where I believe the 4th or 5th time of my career, I'm not too sure, which I was pretty happy with that considering I had moved up when I came to Hawaii.
Pam just got so close a couple of times. It's a funny thing being pro athlete. It just looks like wine and roses, but actually it's really tricky. Every time you lose, it's like getting sacked from a job.
I had to re-admit that I really wanted it because I was going through the motions after a few years. So the next summer, my husband, Mark Ravage, he asked me if I was willing to put everything into it again. I'm like, oh, what do you mean putting everything in? And he's like, no, really?
Bit slower, slow down. Come on, I still win you just a lot easier.
I just sort of made that pact to actually acknowledge that yes, even though it hurts, I might fail again, damn it, gonna give it a good crack.
It seemed to me that in 1990, Pam's all too obvious insecurities had just kind of went away. This natural surfer who was destined to be a world champ had decided that she did actually want to be world champ now. Didn't have any second thoughts much about it.
Wendy had missed one event that year to have surgery, so that gave me an advantage over her. She was in the semi-final before mine. Pauline's in with me in the next one. And we're out there and it's 10 minutes to go and I see Wendy paddling into this massive bomb of a wave and she takes off and just starts charging down this sucker. And I'm looking at the back of it and the whole thing just sort of falls over and racing along inside section. I'm like, oh my God, she got a barrel, didn't she? Oh my God, I was freaking out, convinced she's got a 10-point ride and gone through into the final. And then Pauline goes, she fell off, she fell off, you've won, you've won the world title. And it's just like me? What?
Champion of the Wahida Division, the world champion, Miss Pam Murray.
The World Championship was great and so much good feeling. It was extraordinary. It was like that whole period of the 80s and all that she'd been through and all that humanness she'd had on display. It all came together in a way that I don't think I'd seen for a woman pro surfer before.
I was his love underdog, which I became by my failure to win. Yeah, it's just really nice to be a people's champion for a bit. You pay back all that support that people would have given you and that generosity of spirit, and it was very nice, very nice.
I was like truly happy that Pam won a world title. You know, she's a great surfer. Anybody else would be filthy again, but you know, I was really happy. I don't know why, because it's not like me.
1991 will go down in history as the year that corporate America would like to forget.
900,000 Americans have lost their jobs over the past 5 months.
Something great, but I don't see much positive ahead.
Was in 1991, the world plunged into recession, and it really hurt retail, and it really hurt the big surf companies. At the same time, a lot of surfers around the world turned away from professional surfing. There was a time all of a sudden when people weren't so keen on it. I think they realised that these surfers aren't really golden gods after all.
In the early 90s, everything was just downhill. There was no prize money. You know, the contests that we were traveling to, the waves just sucked. I almost gave up after the first couple of years being on the tours. And I'm like, God, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I was raised on Kauai since I was 6 months old. It was like rainbows and dolphins, and we're surfing and having fun, and everything's great. And then I get on the tour, and it's like womp womp. And I remember going to the first ASP surfers meeting. I hear one of the guys, raise his hand. He's like, boy, when can we get these women off the tour? And I'm like, what? What is he talking about? Why does he want us off the tour?
It's a crisis moment, right? Money's running out of the sport. That'd be the first thought in a lot of the boys' minds is like, just get rid of the chicks. We don't really need them.
Since 1982, the Association of Surfing Professionals, the ASP, has run the men's and women's events back to back. This year raised money for men, $1.7 million. Total for the women, only $165,000. But with the recession biting and contests being cancelled, many of the male surfers believe it's time they stop sharing.
I really think they should be a separate identity, and I think they should hold themselves like women. It's sort of like some of the women are getting sponsored by male surfwear companies, so that they're wearing male clothing, and I don't know. I'd rather see it separate and getting sponsors like from say Well Wholesome or perfumes or cosmetics and doing their own thing.
Okay, fellas, it's 1991. The money's so tight right now that when it comes to the dollars being distributed, the sponsors want the strongest competition. Unfortunately, the girls are getting the worst side of the deal. This is just life. Well, it is later in the show.
We had invested in professional surfing to that point anyway. It's like, well, are they going to pay us out then? We've been promoting this sucker for the last 10 years, and we're just going to walk away now, are we?
Like, we try to talk sense to them, are they in groups or on our own? It just felt like you were just fighting a losing battle. They just thought, oh, you gotta have to play the women's event. Shut them up. You know what I mean? No one better do it, otherwise the those women's rights people will peck us to death.
As the occasional male chauvinist will say that the women piggyback on the prize money of the men, and that they should be out running their own tour. And we say, pull your head in.
But it kind of let you know that you weren't really part of this big picture, going forward. That's what it felt like.
Then about the ripe old age of 24, we would say, oh, I guess this isn't going to last forever. Yeah, we didn't want to be in our 30s going, would you like fries with that?
Pretty much half of the top 8 retired in mid-90s. Myself, Jodie, Frida, Wendy, which was awesome for those girls down below. Like, it was this mass exodus of all these difficult people to beat.
All of a sudden, when we had this new cream of the crop rising up, Pauline, Lane, Lisa Anderson, they were younger, they were super determined.
I didn't start surfing until I was about maybe 14. I didn't have a surfboard, so I just borrowed someone's laying on the beach. And I would make people pretty angry because I wouldn't come in, and they finally got together and got me my own surfboard. My dad was an alcoholic, and he wasn't abusive to my mom, physically, just verbally, I guess. I think just that uncomfortable atmosphere, I was like, I don't know, I don't even want to be in this house, Surfing was such a getaway escape. I wanted to get as far away as I could. I made a plan just to get a taxi, go to the airport, and buy a one-way ticket. When I left, actually, my dad was passed out. My mom was out of town. So I left the note under her pillow and said, don't be mad, or I don't know if it said don't be mad, I just said I'm going to be number 1. And then I ended up at Huntington. When I first saw my first event, like the OP Pro, I remember just watching the contest through the pier pilings. The girls were larger than life to me at that point, but I just remember Jody and Pam telling me that you were just a cocky little brat. I was just probably trying to impress them.
They call you Angry Anderson. Is there a particular reason? Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So everyone else wants to know that I am Angry. And I like the nickname. I think it suits me just perfectly.
There's Lisa Anderson, picking the wall up, working your board. Oh, and a slip off the back.
She was really inconsistent, making mistakes here and there.
There was just so much going on in between. I felt like I was a college student. I was in the sorority, so I was like partying all the time.
What happened last night? Out of hand.
That was when I first met Lane. I was probably a bad impression on her because I was not coming home at night. She was just young. She had a childhood little teddy bear. She had long hair. She was just a little kid. She wanted to win more than anyone I've ever met.
I'm really hungry just because I know I have the potential to be number one. And I don't stop until I've succeeded.
My exposure to the women's surfing was essentially what I saw with my own eyes at Manly Beach, or what I was able to record on a VHS and play over and over and over again.
She was training with me when she was a kid, and she goes, I want to be the best ever. I want to win more world titles than anyone. I was just, George rocked. I'm like, yeah, you got to win one first, like a contest. You got to win something.
If Lane would say she never felt it's too much pushing. Sometimes she needs to tone it down a touch, but she can't. That's just her. She's just a full of the game.
She just invaded our space. Net. The kid didn't stop talking. Questions. Just wanted to know how to win and stuff. And I'd answer. And then I go, Lane, could you shut up for like 5 minutes?
I just remember being like a little bit of Velcro. I would just attach myself to them, like I'm here I am, and they would peel me off and flick me away and beat it, Gidget. The day my dad sat me down to tell me I was adopted. When my dad said, we love you, you're my baby girl, we've always wanted a daughter, however, you're not a blood relation, I chose to hear you've been abandoned, you've been rejected, you're undeserving of love, your mother didn't want you, you are worthless. So at that point I went, hang on, okay, I'm worthless. What can I do to prove that I'm worthy? I know, if I become a world champion, everyone will love me. We know it doesn't happen that way, but that's where it all started. And I kept thinking about, what am I going to be world champion at? When I was 14, I decided I'm going to be a world champion surfer.
'93, big year. Pauline was just a freaking maniac. She won half the events on tour that year. Like it was a blitzkrieg.
The year I was going for the world title, when I went to Hawaii, I had an unbelievably bad attack of arthritis. Basically like a sprained ankle, that's what it's like over your whole body. My elbows wouldn't straighten, my wrist wouldn't go back. And so you imagine trying to get up on a surfboard. So what I ended up doing is my arms are still stuck like that. I'd just punch the board and get up with my fists.
The WCT rated World Cup of Surfing for the women here at Sunset Beach.
Get down to the contest, get a massage. And I wouldn't have surfed before my heats because it was too painful.
Going to the world title, please welcome and acknowledge Pauline Messer from Ireland.
And I'll never forget walking to the water's edge, still completely crooked.
Possibility there for Pauline. You're finding out the red jerseys on the shoulder.
Here I am coming out, my body's completely crippled. And as soon as the hooter went, it was like there was absolutely nothing wrong with me.
check this out.
By qualifying for the final, Pauline Mensah won her first world championship.
That is Pauline Mensah. She's the new world champion.
My stomach is rumbling then. I'm glad it's over, and the bag's fallen off my back. I've been carrying this heavy weight around for a long time, and I'm really glad it's finished.
So when I hear all those stories about people lifting cars off their children, I believe it, because when I surfed and I could surf, I was like, how did I do that?
I actually wanted to get the biggest wave I could find and hang 5 to show everyone how happy I am.
She's really beloved by all the Bondi guys of that era. They couldn't be prouder of Pauline Mensah. I wonder if that's because in so many ways she represents their picture of themselves. Just an absolute die-hard fighter.
When I won the world title, I got given the broken trophy. You got the metal bit and it was attached to the wood, and it was just all loose and shaking. And that year there was no prize, so I didn't win anything. The years before, the years after, there was like 20,000 for first, 10,000 for second. But when I won, there was nothing. And so I got all excited. I made a whole lot of portfolios and thought, I'm going to go to this American trade show and hopefully get some sponsors. I probably went to about 20 of them. A couple of the bigger companies said, oh, we can give you some studies or something like that. I'm just like, I'm really looking for financial support. And then I remember like Lisa walking through or something happening, and they're like, oh, isn't Lisa the world champion? Her name kept getting brought up, and I'm just like, far out. It was just disheartening to know that you're the best in the world at something and people didn't recognise me.
In 1993, the surf companies started trying to figure out what was going wrong and why they were selling so much. And this recession just kicked them in the teeth. Quicksilver had to get together in Hawaii that winter. There was someone there who represented the surf shops in Hawaii. It turned out one of the hot sales items was pairs of size 28 boys' board shorts. They were all like, well, we don't see that many boys in the water here. Like, what's going on? Why are all these size 28 boys' board shorts flying out the doors? At one point that afternoon, some of the Quicksilver crew walked down to the beach. They saw 2 girls walking up the beach. They're both wearing boys' board shorts. And the penny dropped. They just went, oh shit.
Quicksilver just put me on contract. I was going for a world title, so it just was like the perfect moment, the aha moment. And they're like, we're gonna design board shorts for girls we want, just fit them on you. So basically they just took the same design from those real short shorts that Tom wore.
They rekindled a company called Roxy, which they'd originally started to make bikinis, and they began making board shorts for girls. And Roxy just blew up.
It was cool to see that they flipped the Quicksilver logo into a heart. And you're like, oh, how cute.
Then they decided to change the name to Roxy Quicksilver because it got so big they didn't want Quicksilver to fall behind.
Within 4 years, it was a $600 million a year company. Just an explosion.
Suddenly it all seemed so easy, but 10 years earlier, no one figured that out.
It's not rocket science. I never went to university and I could have told them that years ago. It's like Emperor's got no clothes on. Guys, hello.
I love it. We were always said we were 10 years too early. Could have been the Roxy twins.
I'm glad the portraits came on. They look really good. I'm surfing really comfortable in them, and at the same time, you know, everybody's wearing them. It's like a huge craze right now.
Suddenly, there are all these like 12-year-old girls falling behind, ready to buy those board shorts, ready to ride those boards and be out in that water. And then an entirely new generation came through that seemingly did not exist back in the 80s.
My little daughter was one of them, you know, she was born in 1989. There was no question in her mind that she was allowed to surf. She wanted to be a Roxy girl. And it was very much an active thing for her, as it was for all her friends. They weren't buying Roxy to be fashionable. They were buying because it told everybody who saw them that they were surfers. Just the same reason that boys bought Quicksilver and Billabong in the 1980s. The surf industry, people really struggled with it for a while. They were going, well, what do we do with this? We don't even understand it. Nobody told us this was going to happen. They all started trying to make girls' brands. They didn't know what to call them, so they just sort of call them Billabong girls. Rip curls, girls.
You know, for me, like, I hadn't gotten sponsored, and I went to California, and Wingnut came up to me, and he's like, hey, would you be interested in being the face of O'Neill? Because we want to launch a women's brand. And I was just like, ah, oh, finally, it's here.
So on the back of that, a whole new generation of women pro surfers started seeing opportunities that hadn't been there before. Chief among them was Lisa Anderson, spectacularly talented, but just needed everything clicked for her.
I just basically sealed a good sponsorship finally for the first time with Roxy. It was almost like they put all their eggs in my basket, and then I went and got pregnant. And I thought, well, I can't disappoint anyone. My mom was still in the back of my mind, like the whole mission was still there. I still hadn't accomplished that, so I continued to compete for almost 6 months until it got too uncomfortable and too dangerous. I gave birth to her at these 2 events. I was out. And then I came back 2 weeks later and then finished the year up. After having the baby, I missed 2 events. So I finished 7th. So I more than qualified. I stayed in the top 9. So that was crazy. And then the next year, I could have won the world title in Brazil, but I was practicing at a beach break and my spine went ruptured 2 discs, like really badly. Basically, that put me out with 3 events left. So the 2 in Hawaii I forfeited. Second place was Pauline Mentor, and she needed to catch me. So Pauline won both events in Hawaii. It was crazy. I was like, The last event is Narrabeen. And I draw the best amateur, of course, because I'm the high seed. And I could barely walk. But I do remember needing a wave with like 30 seconds, and I got it.
The 1994 Women's World Surfing Champion, Lisa Anderson from the United States of America.
I remember just laying in the surf because my back hurt and I couldn't get up. But then, you know, like I remember Erica, I think Erica's running down. So that was where, that was the moment that got me.
When I was 16, I read it from college, and I don't even know this was going here. Someday I will be world champion. I was wrong. I'm not going to lie on you.
Erica was really the only thing I had time to deal with. I didn't have time to have fun and go out party, and she needed to eat, she needed to be changed, she needed to have a nap, and that took so much of my time that surfing was like my moment to like, you know, that escapism came back again.
It was Surfer magazine. She was wearing Roxy board shorts, as I remember. I think she was doing a big sort of frontside hack or whack. And the cover blurb was, Lisa Anderson surfs better than you.
First time I saw it was in Hawaii in the Foodland racks, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get roasted for that. That's gonna come across like I said it and I'm cocky, or it could just inspire. And I think that that's one I go with. Because a lot of girls were probably afraid to be aggressive or paddle out the back or sit next to that guy that's ripping, or, you know, just, it would be some kind of stigma there that, you know, girls weren't capable of surfing as good as the guys or even share the lineup. Even though they wanted you to surf really good, you still had to have that femininity. Like when Lisa fit it perfect, like the perfect storm. It all came together at the right time.
And then it was finally like, oh my gosh, it's happened. You know, there's an industry, there's a career.
I used to work for Dragon Sunglasses, so they ended up sponsoring Megan Abubo from Hawaii. I'm like, so you're like in the top 5 now. Like, how much money are you gonna make this year? How much do you think you'll make? She goes, oh, I'll probably make 6 figures. And I was like, oh my God. I remember the feeling of like finally just realizing that closing the book on my chapter.
No tears.
But, you know, just being really, really happy for her.
Roxy had been going for a few years and was very supportive of Lisa Anderson. I was the shadow that lived in the shadow, really. I mean, I was shadowing Lisa everywhere, and they basically said, until you become number 1, we won't pay you what you're worth. So we'll pay you when you're number 1, but up until that stage, you're just going to have to suck it up. Even when I was number 2 in the world, which was in 1995, I was earning $8,000 a year for my primary sponsor. I was working 60 hours a week in 4 different professions to generate the financial freedom to be able to pursue my dream of becoming a world champion. And that didn't change until the year before I won my first world title. In 1996, Billabong started women's surfwear, and I put my hand up and went, hey, you guys need a girl, someone that's going to be front and center in the face of your brand, and I did. And they paid me $20,000, and I became the face of Billabong Girls. And then 1997 was the year I stopped full-time work. I felt like I was right in that driver's seat. I had a gun in my foot, there was one bullet in it, and I was aiming it directly towards winning a world title. Ultimately, all I felt was an immediate sense of relief, because I'd been declaring for 16 years I'm going to be world champion. I know my peers were as relieved as I was, because I'd stopped talking about it.
That whole idea that you could surf now as a woman and like not take a backward step all really came of age in that period. But how much actually changed? Well, I don't know if change happens that way, you know. Mid-90s, there was this big wave of Roxy, girls in surfing. Oh shit, isn't this cool? And but we know what really is it, because we didn't understand, we didn't see it coming. and fundamentally we don't believe in it. And so we get toward the end of that decade and it all starts to crumble again.
It got hot and heavy, and there were big budgets, and they were flying as business class, and it sounds like a Wall Street story, really. Brands were making women's clothes, but not sponsoring girls' film. It got to a point where Roxy was outselling Quicksilver, and I know Billabong Girls was accounting for 50% of Billabong's turnover. Yet, when it came to contract negotiation time, they would often say, listen, Joel Parkinson sells board shorts, but Lane, you don't sell bikinis. And so we're only going to pay you a third of what we pay the men's world champion, things like that. So, it was, I think that was a real unfair time. Definitely was very lucky and fortunate to have what I had, but people didn't realize that I wasn't making a lot of money either. Women surfers were still seen as not selling product, whereas apparently guys were selling product. So that was their comeback to why can't I have more money in my paycheck. I mean, that was the biggest thing I was always told, was that I wasn't selling. I mean, I'm pretty sure I sold some board shorts.
They had like the Roxy models that were free surfers. Typical surfy look with the blonde hair, blue eyes, looked hot, never won one contest, and all of a sudden they're getting really big contracts.
No, they were all such dumbass chauvinistic pigs, that's why. Imagine how much money those companies made off the sale of women's clothing and swimwear, that how little they put back into the sport. That, sure, it wasn't direct, but the only reason they were making women's swimwear, boardies and clothing was because of the surfing, really.
I'm sure there's some ill feeling left out there amongst girls who watched that happen and thought, where did that money really go? Well, you know where it went, don't you?
I think it was diversified within the sport of men's surfing, within maybe even the men's industry. I mean, even when we had Kahlua as a sponsor, that money had a loan out to the men's sport for a moment because they didn't have a sponsor.
That whole posse of girls start trying to fight for their rights within the context of the Pro Tour and at the turn of this century, and they ran into a lot of hostility.
When I sort of came out of retirement to go back on the tour because it had got better and there was a blanket sponsor and the money had improved, at the annual general meeting at the Turtle Bay or Coolima seemed to sneak up on us. A motion was put up to reduce the women's vote from 2 votes to 1, and we got voted out. And I remember getting really angry, like out of character angry, and threatening to sue everyone, and they were laughing at me, just like, ha ha, Susie, that's hilarious, you know, and I just was so angry.
I just remember Pam saying that they just said it at the last minute and then just like, you're out. No 2 representatives. I'm like, so how did that get voted? She said they just did it, kicked me out.
You know where you stand then, don't you? They're going to take one of your votes away. It really felt like a personal insult. All those guys that you know so well and have been through a lot together, really, and you think, oh, I don't know if I just pretty much walked away after that.
When I came on tour, I saw Pam's desire to get involved with sporting politics. So I thought, I want to do that too. And so I sat on the board and I sat in those 5-day-long meetings, and I would constantly badger the industry. We need prize money increases. We've got girls on the tour that can't afford to do the tour. And then that was exacerbated by our male counterparts saying, well, if it turns to shit, send the girls out. We were held ransom by the sponsors of the event, saying, okay, the guys won't surf,
there's people at the beach, we need to keep this event going, you girls are gonna have to surf, and we're saying it's substandard conditions, we refuse to surf. So the sponsors of the tour events would individually just focus on who are their sponsored athletes that are still in the contest, go up to them and go, if you don't surf, we'll drop you.
It hit 99 and we were at J Bay and waves were off. And they're like, great, send the women out. Classic moment of women surfing, right? We're just like, really? Like, it's on the rocks. You can't even get two out there.
We all collected our contest jerseys, and so we get right down to the nearest water's edge. And I said, stay sitting here. Like, when he announced we're not paddling out, there's no waves, we're not paddling out. The commentator's saying it's 2 minutes left, you can paddle out. Just stay here, don't move. We knew it was right, there's no waves, that we shouldn't be surfing, but we're also scared, are they going to fine us? Is one of the girls going to go out? So you're making a stand, but you're also living with a lot of fear of like what's going to happen to us for doing this. They had to stop it. They said they can't run the heat without us. That was actually like a pinnacle point where we all started to realise we can do something now. From then on, we started at a few events where it was bad, refusing, and we just make our representative go forward, which would be Lane or Rochelle.
And for whatever reason, they just kept seeing it like, you guys want to break away and you're going to be rebellious. And we're like, what? Wait, where are you getting this story? Like, we're just trying to tell you what we need and what we want. We're not going to stand for less. So we went through this really beautiful peak of like having fun and women surfing, and then it just went, God, we just did this rocky road, and it just got really hard and stressful.
We have to be able to, come to a decision and a majority vote and stick by that and support each other. We're not sitting here for ourselves, we're sitting here for the future generations that are here to come.
I lost myself for a while. Like, my ex-husband and I, we fought a lot. There was controversy and conflict with the women. There was support, and there wasn't support, and I wasn't paying attention enough to my competing, and it just got hard. I felt like all of a sudden I wasn't even a surfer anymore. I'm going to bring it back to a really positive place. I sat at my house on the deck at Sunset Beach with Randy Hill and the heads of Roxy, and we talked about where we could go with women surfing. I'm like, we just want to grow a good wave. We want to be able to surf well and people to see how well we surf, instead of watching us in crappy beach breaks, slopping around. And so he's like, why don't we go to Tabarua? And it was like, ta-da! The lights went on. And it was like, here we go. Now we're talking.
So when the Dream Tour came about, you're having events at G-Land, you're having events at Cloudbreak in Fiji, no one's surfing bad waves in the competition. That really created a great opportunity for everyone, but specifically the women. You're surfing great waves now, let's see what you got.
Paddling on, friend. Oh!
And that was started. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, how about Chopo? You guys surf Chopo? And I'm like, inside I'm like scared, going, oh my God, that's so scary. But I'm like, yes, we will do that.
Got your sacks on, ready to go.
I know that definitely on the Miami, it was challenging and it was scary in ways, but it was this new frontier to up that level and to bring excitement to it.
Yeah. Not only was it super amazing for us, it was also amazing for the spectators.
Tropical Hawaiian Islands for the Maui Women's Pro.
Maybe we can broadcast it and get people to watch. And then slowly, as time progressed and the internet changed, millions of people around the world can watch.
They doubled the prize money. We got the media. We have people shooting photos. We have people videoing.
Watching Lisa Anderson rise, and then watching Lane. I mean, I remember Lane being from Miami, and they called her Gidget. And then suddenly, Gidget's won a bunch of world titles.
Beachley's equals the record of Kelly Slater on the men's tour, but Slater's wins weren't consecutive.
Lane Beachley's done it again, a record 7th world title in 9 years.
A little part of me is kind of bummed that I wasn't there to kind of continue to take world titles from her, because she definitely wouldn't have won 7 if I stayed. And that's the truth. That's really the truth.
I feel like I've been bookended by the two most glamorous, beautiful women in surfing, with Lisa Anderson and Stephanie Gilmore, and I was kind of like the little black sheep in the middle. I remember the last heat I ever competed in was against Stephanie Gilmore, and of course, every world champion wants the Cinderella story, want to go out with a bang, go out and win, and Steph beat me. She won her 6th one at the same age I won my first.
To be this group of girls who are all so talented and so driven to be the very best athlete can be insane.
Steph Gilmore was the true beginning of like a real deep level of support from sponsorship, from her community, from the media, from the ASB, and at a young age, jumped into this huge crowd on the beach and just found success like that, and it was Happy Gilmore. It's like the golden age of women's surfing, really.
Welcome back to the WSL Championship Tour.
The rivalries that are happening now on the women's tour are more interesting. When is there going to be an England American girl to win the world title?
Stephanie Gilmore is now a 7-time world champion, tied for the best of all time with Lynn Beachley.
Stephanie is like the queen. All the men in the straight, she's hit them now. Look who's our best Australian. Not a guy, it's a woman.
Went viral after a video on photographs I shared on social media depicting the
prize money was a fraction of what she would have won if she were a man.
Billabong showed a photo of the men's and women's under 18 juniors final in South Africa. The women's check was exactly 50% to the men's.
I don't know why it blew up, because every single photo would have been the same of any kid that won any event. Didn't they not photograph my checks?
Yes, the brand, Billabong, copped it. The surfing industry copped it. The governing body copped it and went, all right, we're going to do something about this.
Then they just, out of the blue, announced that women surfers from 2019 were going to get equal prize money.
And today I'm delighted and very proud to announce that we will be moving forward with fully equal prize money for the men and the women from 2019 onwards.
And I was like, Because honestly, it doesn't matter how many times I think about it, I know it's just started an event. I still can't believe that happened while I'm alive.
Equal waves, equal pay. New this morning, the World Surf League is closing its gender pay gap. The WSL is the first American-based global sports league to offer equal prize money.
I was in my car and I started crying when I heard it on the radio. Yeah, I was so happy. I was like, no, like a happy cry.
It was like all of us girls, Elaine and Lisa, like everybody that was in our generation was all of a sudden connecting. And we all just kind of like dropped what we were doing and just started crying.
The challenge that belief is still there, it was self-imposed. Oh, we shouldn't really want that because we're not as good really. Let's just hold back rather than, yeah, we deserve it.
It's also pioneering and groundbreaking as well. How do you feel it changes the sport moving forward?
It's huge for the sport of surfing, for women in general.
It's not only a momentous moment for female surfers, but female athletes. It's men and women across so many different industries all around the world.
It's hard for us to even imagine $100,000 for first place. I mean, oh yeah, I won $100,000. Can't relate.
When I was really young, I was looking at the tennis players, I was like, wow, it'd be so cool to be able to do something and make money and make a living at something you really love to do and it's fun. And surfing is like that now. I live down the south coast of New South Wales in Australia, and I run a surf school. I've got 2 pretty much grown-up kids. So I still love my surfing and I get a big kick out of teaching people. We also run retreats, so we get women, often like around my age, maybe they're the ones that were sitting on the beach in their crocheted bikini back in the 70s and didn't get to keep on with surfing. I live in Costa Rica. I'm a coach to pro juniors. Live a very simple life. I really like my own time, you know, just chilling. I surf every day.
So now I'm in the Northern Rivers and I'm a school bus driver. There's quite a few kids on my bus that surf. We always talk about what they're doing, what they're riding, and saving money. There was a kid on my bus and there was like a surfboard and a skateboard thrown out. I'm like, oh, quick, grab that skateboard. You can sell that later. I just love being in a job that you can help make a change.
As corny as they say, I just was so blessed. So we've had the opportunity for such a big chunk of our lives. We never made a lot of money, but we did what we loved. There's lots of people that are still walking this planet, bumping into walls, figuring that shit out. After I left and was spat out the other side and you become a civilian, man, that's tough.
If someone had said to me in the beginning, you're going to go on this tour, you're going to surf the shittest waves on the planet, and you're going to earn really crappy money, are you sure? I still would have said, yep, I'm in. My life's moved on like 30 years ago. I'm happy being a mum and whatever, happy as anything. But we don't get to understand how important we are because nobody tells us.
I think they changed the boys. the boys during this era went from being utterly dismissive of the girls to becoming respectful just by force of will and by your own actions. As a small but fired up group, they changed minds en masse.
Proud that we just didn't get in and go home. You know, if you have no one to watch, if you can't see it, you can't be it.
We all fought very hard to make people realise that we're not in the surf just for fun, to make it pretty. We're there because we really desperately want to be recognised as professional athletes.
In somewhere, in some way, what you've done in the sport has touched somebody. They didn't learn surfing by not knowing anyone before. The girls always talk about Kim and Margot and Linda Benson and all of that generation before Real Sun. Like, there's just so many of them. They're the ones that made the sport happen before we did. But that's something you need to continue to pass on.
Every surf, I pretty much always head count the amount of girls in the water and give myself a little fist pump because sometimes there's more of us and just have a bit of a giggle or talk to them and go, how good's this? Chicks are out in force.
I can honestly say that we all tried to make a difference and really push the sport, and it did. Look where it is today. It's there because of the people before us, people that had the courage to be different, grab a board, go for a surf.
I watch every wave of every event. I love that they get to surf in beautiful waves that allow them to look good. They've had a couple where the waves haven't been that great. I kind of get a bit warm and fuzzy inside when that happens. I don't mean to, but I just think, how's them apples?
They're going to have a question and answer thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've cried the whole way through that. I'm going to do this. Girl. I'm all right. You keep it. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. I mean, I don't know if it's boring if you want me to surf, but for me, it's like the earlier girls, the later girls, I know who they are, but I didn't surf with them, but the earlier girls, I was surfing with them.
Yay. Here's the projection.
Oh, to submit the question.
Is it
Oh. Oh.
So then you can send your kids down.
Yeah. But are you a surfer?
No, just her mate.
I know Pauline as well.
Yeah.
I used to surf with her. She's a bit younger than me, but I went to our 40 years reunion about 4 years ago at Cool.
Yeah.
The later girls I don't know, but Lane's from where I came from, she's much younger. Pam I went to school with, she's 2 years younger. And Jodie came from WA, she was a bolster. Oh look, the girls are there. Hello.
This International Women's Day screening event.
What's the code?
87374.
Steaming live is almost 50 dinners around.
Hello, Pauline. That's Pam. Hi, Jodie.
Along with the film director. I'm Tracy Hutchison, and can I start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that host our screenings and Q&A participants around the country tonight. I also acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri and Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and to the First Nations leaders who are part of tonight. What a film! What an incredible film! And what a day to be celebrating the achievements of a group of groundbreaking women who not only changed the face of professional surfing, but also equality, recognition, visibility and inclusion in and out of the water. I am so pleased to introduce some of the film stars, 1990 World Champion Helen Burridge, Big Wave legend Jodie Cooper, 1993 World Champion Pauline Nesta, 7-time World Champ Lane Beachley, and the film director Chris Neelius. We will be running a Slido app for questions, so we really welcome your questions from around the country tonight. It's a fantastic opportunity to ask these women and the director some questions. The Slido details on the screen. It's slide.sli.do. Already getting lots of questions in, but as this late goes, I'm just going to start off by directing some questions to our stars tonight. And it's often really hard to realise the significance of flashpoint moments when you're in the middle of them. So I'm going to ask Pam Burridge first. When you see your younger self fighting not just for yourself, but for all of the women on the tour, what impact does that have on you now?
Well, it makes me profoundly grateful that we didn't just give up, and walk away, like we said, like all those little battles that would get into us. I think we were bloody-minded enough, just or selfish enough, or just wanted to serve so much that we just kept at it, despite all that evidence to the contrary that we should probably walk away. You know, we always just had enough in our kick to just get to the next contest and keep going. So yeah, I think it was all meant to roll out that way, but I was glad I shared it with these characters we have on the screen and those other ones we saw in the film and the other ones that were even more underground, you know, like a lot of people that I feel connected to, because of the film, and yeah, it's really cool.
Pauline, there's an incredible moment in the film at J Bay when you refused to paddle out as a group because the surf wasn't breaking. It was a moment of incredible solidarity. How hard, though, was it to achieve that when you were all ultimately competing against each other?
Well, it was really hard because there was a few times where we tried to do that, and then one girl would get scared and paddle out. And at this time, all the girls just had enough. There was pretty much no waves, and they're like, righto, your women are on. And we're just like, no way, like, let's just try and stop it. So I'm just like, let's just not paddle out. Everyone don't paddle out. And, you know, it's not just me, it was as a team together. We just said, we're just going to stand together and unite and do this. And we're scared of it, you know, getting fined or getting slapped on the wrist or whatever, but it was worth it because we're just so sick and tired of surfing in these waves that really were not contestable.
Jodie, you were also staring down being outed on tour. There's that incredible photo or that footage of you and Wendy in a media conference. It really captured the isolation of the struggle, the misogyny, not just from men, but from other women in and out of the water. What kept you going during that time?
I just think like the other girls, you know, just that pure, deep passion from within to be successful at whatever you did as an individual and as a group. We were all, you know, competing there to be the best in the world and to be, you know, the best surfers on stage, so to speak, on the day. But we also were a group that got together that wanted to see the success of the sport because that kind of reflected on us too. So I think that's what kind of drove us all to, you know, just hang in through the bad times and just keep going, you know. I think the power of the group just, yeah, it helped you get through those tough times, pretty much.
Lane, best known as Gidget on the tour and to everyone in Manly, 7 world titles would probably set you up for retirement if you were a bloke. How do you reflect? I know the stats on, you talk about the stats on what you earned over 20 years, and I think it's, you know, below the national wage of about $25,000 a year when you average it out. But how do you reflect on those battles for equal wages and equal pay and also fighting for your place as an elite competitor?
Similar to what the other girls have said, with Pam, I agree with her. If we'd given up, then we certainly wouldn't be witnessing the success of women's surfing today. And the fact that we were able to band together and fight against the systemic sexism and chauvinism and recognising that the future success of the sport, as Jodie said, really rested on our shoulders. So I look back on that and go, wow, the fight was worth it, the battle was worth it, because there was plenty of times when I wanted to give up. There was plenty of times when I was stomping my feet under the table and just felt so discouraged and disheartened by the lack of respect and just the discouragement from our male counterparts in our industry and our governing body. It was sometimes it was all too much, and I just, similar to growing up in Manly where I was threatened and intimidated all the time and paddled in with my tail between my legs with tears in my eyes. There was plenty of times when I felt that way, but if I didn't have the strength to stand up and fight, then one of these girls did or one of our peers did, and that really inspired us to keep lifting. So I never reflect on my career with any sense of bitterness or unhappiness. There's a lot of dissatisfaction and sometimes a little bit of frustration about what I allowed to continue under my own watch and that I was setting really bad standards, but I've learned a lot from that and ensure that I stand firm in my values today to ensure that we leave the sport and the world that we live in a better place than where we found it.
Chris Nelius, I think we're really mindful of the people, the women in particular who came before us, especially on this International Women's Day. There's a particular timeline that you have identified to focus on for this film that doesn't go back to perhaps the Phyllis O'Donnells or the Gail Coopers, some of the earlier women that were some of the first who were competing. What was it about this era, you know, this group of women, what was going on in the 80s that you wanted to capture in a film?
I think there's kind of two parts to that answer. One was, I didn't really want to make a sort of encyclopedic history of women's surfing because as a filmmaker, you want to try and make something that's full of character and dramatic, and so it was all about trying to pluck a part of that history that made it interesting. And then the other aspect was just I just really loved that 80s generation of pro surfing. Like it was the birth of the ASP, and the 80s seemed to be like a lot of hope, and all the women here have told me how they had stars in their eyes, and there was so much expectation and bad hair and fashion and and characters really in surfing that I don't think you really witness in other sports or even in surfing today. I think it's something that's sort of pre-social media, and there's just something really kind of wild and exotic about it. And so that's sort of, I followed my nose to that part of the story, and then got to meet these guys, and here we are today.
Some of that, some of the things that you've used, some of the archival footage in particular, surfers like Nat Young and Damien Hardman reflecting on their thoughts about the place of women in surfing is pretty shocking, and it's not that long ago. How much, Pam, I might start with you perhaps to respond to this, but how much has changed, do you think, for women on the pro circuit, and how much expectation was there to be an acceptable face and body of women surfing for the professional surfing league at the time?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of pressure, but it was confusing because you really didn't know how you were supposed to be. There was lots of like mixed messages, double standards, all that sort of thing. And also you had these young people growing up in the spotlight and trying to figure it out. So like trying to gain acceptance from someone like Nat, who came from another era and always keen for a headline, or any of those guys that spoke on the documentary with some pretty blunt one-liners. They've all got daughters now, and while it's very Scott Morrison-esque, that's the only way you get a perspective on how you can live in the world with females, and when you have some of your own, they'll have a different perspective on it now, and because time's passed as well, so they might not say the same thing now in the same way, but that was the culture of the day, and we were just trying to break through, and there hadn't been women, like no woman was at the top of the hierarchy in the lineup. Like if I paddled out to Newport Peak or Narrabeen, well, I wasn't sitting on the actual apex of that peak. I mean, I might nowadays every now and then hold my spot there and still wait, let a few sets go and then pick one off, but hold my spot. Yeah, it's taken 30 years to do that, and not in a strange spot. I wouldn't do that. That's it, way on the shoulder still. So, yeah, there's that hierarchy, and that culture was like hardwired. So it's not surprising, but I think it's changed, and there'll be still a hierarchy, but it's sort of wider, and it's more inclusive. Like there's more ways to get up different sides of the mountain, I guess. And there is a pathway. Let's stop with all this, but you know what I mean. There's more ways of being included in the surf, and you can ride different boards. You can be a different gender or non-gender or whatever. You can get out there and you can surf. It's way more inclusive. That would never done any of that. 20, 30 years ago.
Is there a sense, Lane, for you looking at that time, at that group of women who were just that little bit ahead of you? You talk about wanting to latch on to this group of surfers and really kind of learn everything good from them. When you sort of look back on seeing a film like this, hearing those stories, in real time and in reflection, how do you sort of see yourself in that story in terms of reflecting on how tough it was and your part too in paving the way for the women that came after you.
One thing I like to say about this film is it shines a really positive light on what was a pretty dark and negative time for women surfing, and I can't deny the person that I was, and as both Pauline and Wendy said, that's who I was, and I was a character who was hungry to learn, who was hungry to win, who had my self-worth and identity wrapped up in my achievements. So everything that happened to me was self-defining, and that made my whole career a lot more challenging than it really needed to be. But in saying that, I was very fortunate. I was surrounded by mentors like these ladies and Wendy and Lisa, who were willing to share their knowledge with me and shortcut my struggle and shortcut my ascent to becoming a world champion. I mean, I can pretty much recall a time where every one of these surfers on screen has either guided me or mentored me or slapped me across the face in a metaphorical way to tell me to pull my head in and smarten up or change my attitude or try doing things a little bit differently. And I'm really grateful for that honesty and that friendship and that candor, because it's not what happens to you that matters the most, it's actually how you respond to it. And I was just really grateful that I had that honesty and that compassion. Even though they were my competitors, they were also my peers, and they looked out for me, and as much as sometimes they hated me or resented me, they were still always there to support me. And still to this day, Pauline Mensah won me my 4th world title, so there's a lot that I'm grateful for to all these women, and I'm really grateful that they were my predecessors and they laid down the platform that enabled me to benefit from, and then I was able to then lay down a better platform for the current generation to benefit from. So we've all been there to support each other and essentially leave the sport in a better place than we found it.
Jodie, you talk about wanting to be considered a great surfer. You didn't want to be a great female surfer. You wanted to be considered a great surfer, and you made Sunset your own. Pulling into those huge waves in Sunset still takes my breath away. Why was it important to you to be considered first and foremost a great surfer?
Especially in that fashionable one-piece, Jodie.
Yeah, that was a classic part of the film, wasn't it? Just trying to tuck all my bits and bobs back in. Lucky I didn't have a lot of balls. It'd been a little bit more graphic, but yeah, look, for me, I was brought up as a kid, and all my life I was always told, you were good for a girl. That classic, like pretty much like the catch cry to the whole film. And at a young age, it was always like, oh, she's a girl. And, I was brought up by 2 brothers, and I always had to rise to the occasion. If I had to tag along with them, I had to be as good as one of the guys. Otherwise, I was, left behind or wasn't allowed to go. And so all my life, I hated that thing like, oh, she's not bad for a girl, hey, and that just rang a big bell in my ears, so to speak. So when I got to that part of my life when I just wanted to be the best, I was obviously wanting to get out there and beat all the girls, because that's how it was, situated. You only surfed against the girls and the guys surfed against the guys. But I kind of always deep down wanted to be renowned, to make the major statement, which was, geez, she's a bloody good surfer, isn't she? And then end of sentence, period. And just because of, of my past, plenty of times when I was a kid, I've said this before, but I used to watch those silly old war movies, and, Sophie Loren would be running down the road with high heels on, and then she'd trip and her heel would break, and they'd all get caught and end up in some German prison camp because of the girl. And I always used to get the shits, because it was like they always used to make the women out as, like pathetic or, not up to scratch. And I think that just set the bar for me. And I just wanted to, that was my bar. I knew I'd sort of made it when, if I could possibly get to that point.
Pauline, the acceptable face of the women's surfer is something that comes through really strongly in all of the stories. Who the judges wanted to get the points, all of those sorts of things. You talk about, looking like a boy, dark-haired, freckle-faced kid. How heavily did that weigh on you, not looking the part? How much did that make you more determined to prove yourself?
Oh, it was massive. Like, I just kept hearing it again and again from the surf industry that Like even when I won the world title, that we don't want to sponsor her because she doesn't have the look that we want. And then that just kept bringing me back to when I was a child, and my mum taught us how to survive, by collecting rubbish on the side of the streets and selling it. And I was just like, fuck you guys, I'm going to do it myself. And so that's when I decided to, buy a whole lot of Levi jeans in America and get a really cool big old bike and bring that over to France and triple my price. And kind of made me proud to do it myself. So yeah, I was bummed that I missed out, but it felt quite amazing to know that I did it really pretty much my whole career on my own.
We've lost you, Tracy.
There we go, you got it.
We'll start taking some of the questions that are coming in, and they're flooding in. I reckon you're going to be picking up lots of emails over the next little while as well. But there's a question here about, I guess some of the men who are not very supportive have been highlighted in the film. But there's a question about that core group of men who were actually really supportive. You can name names if you want to, but perhaps just talk more generally about how important it might have been at that time to have support from some of the blokes on tour and some of the men in the industry itself. Who wants to jump at that one?
Well, I think a real key thing was if we didn't have any male support, I think none of us would have gone anywhere. They were fundamentally running the sport, and the first surf school I went to, because I was the only girl that was there at the age 10. And I got picked out and not groomed, nothing weird, just helped along and showed how to surf, and then sort of sponsored. So those are the things that encourage you and give you a pathway to carry on. And right through my surfing career, there was a lot of those moments. There's people that they see the talent and the passion, and they tell you how it works. They help you out, and I think a lot of us would call most of those guys on tour friends in many ways, and we spent fun times with them and bonded and all those things. But on an individual level, but on a concept level, they still weren't fans of women surfing, because women surfing was some kind of unpalatable thing that somehow would bring down the whole brand. But they still kind of liked us and interacted and would give you credit when credit was due as well. So it was weird. You're getting sort of slapped down as a notion, but yeah, you still felt enough of a bond, enough of the time that you didn't feel entirely on your own. So yeah, there's definitely heaps of blokes doing the right thing, but the culture of the time was so toxic. They wouldn't question it when they were just, they weren't correcting stuff when stuff was said. Chicks can't surf, basically, was a refrain, and no one really corrected that.
Chris, as a filmmaker, so often, it takes a film, it takes the telling of stories to recognise that something happened. The very idea that history is recorded and it's his story, the conjugation of the word. Why for you was this such an important film to make more broadly? Because it makes many points about not just the battle in the surf, but more broadly about the place of women in Australia. Why was that important for you as a filmmaker?
Look, I'll be perfectly honest. That wider story about, why we should be giving women an equal opportunity wasn't that wasn't my main concern coming into making the film. I was interested in telling a story that I didn't think had been told before. There certainly wasn't a book written about it. I think, a couple of the surfers in our film have autobiographies or biographies, but that was kind of it. You can find one or two articles, but I was motivated to unearth a great story that hadn't been told before, and I definitely was motivated by seeing lots of young women in the surf over the last 20 years, seeing those numbers increase, and looking at those young women and wondering, do you know your history? Like, do you know on the women's side of things, because it's easy to learn the male history, like you can open any surf magazine and there'll be even a story about male history in it. So that's easy, but do you get a chance to find out about Pam and Pauline and Lane and Jody and everybody else? And so that was definitely a motivation. But one thing that I didn't fully learn or realize, which I know I have since learned from when we were editing the film, myself and my co-writer Julianne, we really learned on a deep level that this story tells you that if you give women an opportunity, if you share the wave and nurture that opportunity, then they will make the world a far better place than you could ever have imagined. There's sort of two reasons why you should give women an opportunity. One is because it's a right, and there's the moral right aspect to it. But the other one is we're missing out if we don't do that. And surfing is the perfect example of that. The Roxy Revolution, all the way to equal pay today. If you look at equal pay and what that does for women in the surfing world and young girls, why can't we translate that to other parts of society? What's stopping us? And what possible reason could you have to not have equal pay? It makes absolutely no sense. And that's, I think, something I learned on a deep level from making the film. And I really hope other young men, teenage boys and so forth can learn that lesson as well as girls being inspired by the film. I just hope this can be a bit of a lesson to people. And it's also just a really great, surfing kind of came back right at the last moment and redeemed itself in a way. And that's what makes it such a cool sport as well. Not many other sports have done this. And it sort of brings some faith back.
The pro circuit now is a very different place for women on the tour for the most part. We certainly see, Tyler Wright, Steph Gilmore, surfers who are really kind of setting themselves up from prize money in surfing. It is one of the great challenges of being out in front is that you're often not the recipient of, or the beneficiary of the struggle. I might throw to Pauline for this one and just talk about just the challenges, I guess, of feeling really proud of being part of changing the pay equity. That moment when Steph Gilmore is there with Kelly Slater and everyone's getting equal prize money. There is an incredible moment there where you think, wow, we got there. But I'm sure there's also a moment where you sort of feel like, damn, we were too early. What's that been like?
No, for me it was absolutely amazing. When I heard it, I was driving the car and I was in a really beautiful spot just near my home. And as I was going over the hill, it's like one of my favourite spots. They announced on the radio that the women were getting equal pay. And I just started crying. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm so happy and I can't believe it happened in my lifetime. And just so cool. And, I had it tough, but it's just sort of like life lessons really. And I missed out financially, but to get the acknowledgement now is just absolutely awesome. So, yes, like my mum always says, better late than never. And just the reaction I've had with the GoFundMe page and the support and just the messages has just been incredible. So I really don't feel like I missed out. Yes, it was hard at the time, but just to look back and be appreciated now means a lot.
And the good thing is,
there's a couple of questions
too, right? It wasn't all bad. It was challenging and there were setbacks and, we had to fight and struggle, but ultimately we had a lot of fun while we're doing it.
Definitely, we had lots of fun.
So there was lots of talk last night at the Q&A after the movies that we did in Sydney where Michaela was referring to all of your archive footage and your home video they could make a whole movie, but majority of it would be nudity. So we'd have to edit a lot of it out.
Naughty Paws, that's where my name came from.
There's a couple of questions that have come through around still today, and I know this too, paddling out and still being hassled out of the water as a woman. It's described in the questions here as the trash talking that still happens to women in the surf. We've all heard it, we've all been on the receiving end of it. Got a number of young women surfers who are in our audiences tonight around Australia who probably need some advice on, what do you say? How do you handle that in the surf? Jodie?
Oh, you're asking me. I'd probably, give them a mouthful back, to be honest, because I can't hold back. Probably tell the silly old bugger to paddle in himself. He's embarrassing himself out there. But times have really changed a lot, though. I surf up around northern New South Wales, and, the ratio to guy to girl is just 50-50 these days. It's, in certain surf spots. In life, you're always going to get obstacles. You're always going to get an idiot or some ding-dong that's going to try and dictate to you what you shouldn't be doing, or, it's going to try and, present a negative situation out of what's going on. And, I think we're all different individuals and we all deal with things differently. So, how I would approach it would probably be very different to, say, someone else. And, I think these days, luckily, is happening less and less. I suppose politeness is always a good way to go about, and maintain your morals, But sometimes, trying to even do that can still get you in hot water. I mean, I've been in situations, as we all know, it's been very well documented around the world. I've had a few issues in the past, and they have come from moments where there's been no slurring moments, or I've done something and I've just told someone to actually mellow out, and I've caught the physical abuse or of someone. So you just never know how that situation can go. But luckily, I think these situations are getting less and less. As in directed towards women in particularly. There's still a lot of aggression in the water these days because, let's face it, surfing's becoming a really, really popular sport, and when you go to certain locations that are quite, good, or they're popular, or they're pumping all the day, it's pretty packed. And I think it's more directed now as, surf rage, because people can't catch a wave and there's so many people trying to get the best wave. So, yeah, I think it's changed a little bit, but there's still definitely that sort of rage going on out in the water. It's just been guided into a different direction.
Just chuck a chihuahua at him. Chuck a chihuahua at him, I reckon.
I've got my fair share of shall I call it, being a bit of an authoritarian out in the water, and it's quite often it's directed towards men. So it's not gender specific, this need for education and policing of attitude in the lineup. So I can imagine young girls would automatically feel threatened, and then all of a sudden someone said something bad to them. And at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of basically a lack of education and therefore a lack of etiquette. Yeah. The challenge is that the etiquette that's in the water is unspoken and uneducated. So people are just going to, the way that I learned it was by paddling out and doing the wrong thing and getting abused, and then asking them, well, what is the right thing to do? Can someone educate me? Can someone please help me? And so I learned to find my allies in the lineup. So if you're a young girl paddling out, number one, don't paddle out on your own. Always paddle out with somebody else, whether it's a guy or a girl, but just someone that you know has your back. And then find the alpha surfer. So the best surfers always dominate the lineup. And if you go to them and you ask them for their guidance and support, they will give it to you if they're respectful. If they're not respectful, then you don't want to surf there in the first place. So get out of there and go surf somewhere where it's going to be, your presence is going to be respected and recognised and not abused.
A lot of people asking for advice. Advice either for young girls who want to get, or older women
I've never quite mastered it and still want to get into surf. What's the great advice? I might just start with Pam and work through, and as a parting, we're wrapping up now, but just Pam, for you, what do you say to young girls, older women about, getting into, just get yourself a buddy, or at least one buddy, preferably like 3 or 4, and get yourself a little, social group, text each other, watch the forecast, and commit to going surfing and talk about where will be the best spot for us, what should we ride, and you get that back and forth, how you figure out where you should go, what it's like, and you've got a commitment to go, because you can't learn surfing in a weekend. Even though I run a surf school, hey, come on, in a weekend. So you need to keep going at it, and then it'll change your life. Like, it's a lifestyle thing, and it's learning about yourself in so many other ways. So yeah, that's the main thing. Board, wetsuit, a couple of buddies, some good 2 beaches that face a different way. So you've got the different conditions for different weather, and then you've got some options to give it a good crack. And we all, even good ways end with a wipeout a lot of the time. So, just give it a crack. Anyone else?
Go palsy, or it's got a lot of advice.
Past my bedtime.
Go to bed early, get up early.
No, I just say go for it. Like, I just always ignored everybody, and I get yelled at and screamed at. And even today, I did a live show today, and someone sent me, I did get one nasty message saying, "You're leso, blah blah blah. Go talk about that stuff somewhere else. You don't have to put it onto TV." And I just went delete. So I just ignore them. Just get out there and have fun. Yeah, that's all I can say.
I think that's a good key message, guys. I mean, it's all about having fun, it's and not putting too much pressure on yourself and just enjoying it. I remember when I first went to surf, if we're gonna take it to there, like I remember just riding the whitewater and absolutely just loving it and getting dumped and spread out and hair all tied in knots, and I just loved it from the day one. So I just think it's about, as what Pam said, get a little gang of peeps together, and so you can banter and tell the story. Nothing beats when you're coming from the surf and you swap the stories and what happened and the way that you caught, and just don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Just enjoy it for what it is, and like I've said this before, but you don't have to be the best in your pack. There's always going to be someone maybe better than you or whatever, but just enjoy it, and just don't. Like if you're not the best stand-up surfer, then, maybe you should learn a kneeboard or something like that, or bodyboard or whatever. But it's just about getting in the ocean and having a good time with your mates and just, having a great time. So, that'd be my advice.
And to that point, it's never too late to start.
Absolutely.
Women learning how to surf in their 50s and 60s. I met a guy who caught his first wave at 77. So
wow.
Women tend to put a lot of excuses in front of themselves as to why they couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't. But like all the girls have said, if you grab a group, go to a surf school so you just learn the basics. A lot of people, irrespective of gender and age, they're afraid of failing, afraid of getting hurt, afraid of looking foolish, afraid of not being able to do it. And that's how we all started. We all got hurt. We all made fools of ourselves. We ended up with salt water in our noses and sand up our butts. And, it's just part of the adventure of learning how to surf. It's certainly not a stylish thing to learn, but as Pam said, it's a life-changing thing to learn, because there's so many health benefits to immersing yourself in the ocean. The mental aspect, the physical aspect, the social aspect, the emotional aspect, that has so many holistic healing benefits to being immersed in nature and surrendering to a force that's way more powerful than you, that you're never, ever going to regret going surfing.
So true.
Yeah.
Hey, Tracy, do you mind if I jump in with one thing, because I know you're about to wrap it up? I was just going to say that there's one star of this film who's not on this Q&A tonight. I mean, there's a few more stars of this film that are overseas and such, but for all the people that don't know Wendy Botha, yes, she really is like that. And she really is that feisty and that funny. She's just not really into public speaking, so that's really the only reason she's not here tonight. But I just wanted to kind of do a bit of a shout out to how's them apples, Wendy Botha. And I also wanted to say thank
Line of the
you.
film.
I want to say thank you to everyone on this Q&A panel and everyone around Australia. It blows my mind that there are people in every state in Australia right now listening to me babble on.
It's babbling.
Well done, Chris. Thank you.
And Chris, congratulations to you and your producer, Michaela Persky, crowdfunded this film, which is a story in and of itself. Congratulations to you. It's a beautiful film and paying tribute to an incredible cohort of inspiring women whose passion and resilience and commitment continues to inspire generations of people and completely change the face of surfing and more broadly in this country. So thank you, Pam Burridge. Thank you, Jodie Cooper. Thank you, Lane Beatty. And thank you, Pauline Mensa. And thanks for having us in your cinema tonight. It's been a real honour for us to have a chat to these incredible women. Happy Women's Day to all of you and all power to you.
Yeah.
Well, you guys spread the word.
Yeah. Girls can surf.
Yeah.
Thank you.